Brakate Hawa, Brakate Hawshai, Brakate Hawa, Brakate Hawshai, Kal Halalamla, Yahweh Bashem Hawshai, Bahashem Rakakodash, double honors to the apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone who taught me this truth. Peace and salutations to the Akim out there pushing his word in all honesty, in all sincerity, right? To the rest of the believers, Shalom. And, this lesson, is gonna be entitled, Deception and Political Spectacle. I believe the elder brother Rakwakam even did a video entitled it something similar, And, unless you've been living under a rock, you've been seen and being flooded, by news about, Trump wanted to take Greenland, and NATO alliance falling apart, and this coming off the heels of the US invading Venezuela and supposedly capturing Maduro and taking him to America to stand trial. And then you don't hear anything about that. And then before that, then you hear him threaten Colombia, Mexico, Cuba, and a couple other countries. Then you hear nothing about that. Then it's all on the news is Greenland. You see me? Then Canada is saying, oh, we're going to do business with China now, F America, Then a bunch of drama. NATO is falling apart. We can't trust America anymore, yada, yada this, yada, yada that. And then, no, we're gonna read what's happening now, right? So before we get there, right, I typed here Google how is political spectacle, right, and chaos used as a tool, right? And it says here, this is the AI overview. Political spectacle and chaos are used as intentional, strategic tools to shape public perception, manipulate discourse, and consolidate power by replacing substantive policy debate with emotional drama, sensationalism, and manufactured crises. By creating 24/7 news cycle of outrage or confusion, right? Political actors can dominate media attention, distract from unfavorable news, and weaken institutions, right? So this man, the orange man, Trump, Nero 47, is a political actor, right? When you are seeing a president releasing private email and message chains between him and another head of state on social media, right? Like some fucking high school teenager, pardon my French. That's not real. That shit's not real. When you hear about a head of state, right, saying, I'm going to take another piece of land from another country, we're going to take it, right, and the world is going up in uproar, that's not real. It's manufactured crises, political spectacle. Now, one of the things that the elder brother Rakwakam said is that America doesn't need to take Greenland. They already have access to it, and we're going to confirm that here in this article. So this is from NBC News, right? And it says, let's close out this ad. The damage has been done. As Trump claims victory on Greenland, Europe loses trust. And that was the whole point. The whole point was to use all this, right, to create a reason, an excuse for a rift between America and Europe, so that certain policies or legislative changes can be pushed forward, right? President Donald Trump flew home from an international conference here Thursday with a parting message. It was an incredible time in Davos. For him, perhaps, for many of the country's European allies, it was a sign of global rupture that could reverberate for years, right? Trump has appeared to back off his maximalist demand that the U.S. take ownership of Greenland, moving instead toward a deal that would allow U.S. to place more troops, bases, and military hardware on the island, a territory of Glenmark. In an interview with Fox Business, he said, "We are getting everything we wanted total security, total access to everything. Here's the point. Yet all of this was available to Trump from the start, without the drama that sent the NATO alliance barreling towards an internal crisis. The only non-negotiable point for Denmark was that Greenland shouldn't be absorbed by the US. We can discuss increased military presence, more troops, you name it. Basically, you can have it under existing treaties. Right? And that's exactly what the elder brother Rakwayakam said. Right? Under existing treaties between NATO allies, America could put any amount of more military bases there, right? And all of that good stuff. Right? There was no need to make this big confusing thing. Oh, we're gonna take Greenland because China and Russia are threatening the security of the Arctic, and we need to make sure that the US is secure, and so we need to take Greenland. America needs to own Greenland. When you could have just put more troops there if you wanted. So this all goes back to what? Political spectacle and chaos. Right? Creating disorder to bring order. What does that remind you of? Order ab chaos. Order through chaos. Leaders may deliberately foster instability to present themselves as the only authority capable of restoring order, justifying the repressive measures or expanding executive power. Weaponizing culture wars when losing debates or substantive issues like the economy. And right now, the American economy is tanking. The American economy is tanking. Right? The petrodollar is almost no more. And when that goes, it's done. Right? There is no legislation passed in the US, right, for ICE troops to no longer need a warrant signed by a judge in order to go into a house for someone who has been officially given deportation notice. Right? Certain laws and geopolitical and geoeconomic situations are unfolding that powers that be don't want it to focus on. And there are also certain laws and shifts in the geopolitical climate and agenda that need to happen that require chaos. When every time you turn on the news, there is sensationalism, right? There is emotionally charged language. There is confusion. You, the viewer, cannot settle and have a concrete thought. You are constantly on an emotional high, and therefore you are very susceptible, right, to suggestive programming, right? Information overload, flooding the media with contradictory information, misinformation, or scandals renders the public confused, fatigued, and less trusting of established institutions, right? This is another thing I wanted to read to. The politician as a performer. Leaders use choreographed performances to project strength, authenticity, and emotional appeal, fostering a personal connection with supporters that bypasses traditional media filters. So we need to know these things. 2 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 11 says, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Let's see what that says in NLT. So that Satan will not outsmart us, for we are familiar with his evil schemes. We should be able to see through these things and say this is not real, this is all an act. To what? To distract us from something else that's going on. Right? There's something that's always been said in Great Millstone that rings true evermore today. Anything that is being pushed in mainstream media and social media, that is not what you should be paying attention to. Right? Psalm 64 and verse 1. It says, hear my voice, O God, in my prayer preserve my life from fear of the enemy. Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity. You know what? Matter of fact, let me see if I can find that. The Spirit is bidding me to look this up. Right? Focus for the WEF for this year 2026. Right? Right. So here it is now. Right? So they're focusing on cooperation in a contested world, unlocking new sources of growth, investing in people, deploying innovation responsibly, harnessing AI, quantum computing, right? Biotechnology, right? This is what they want. AI transformation, the brain economy, a focus on human potential, right? There's another one here. They should be talking about digital ID and CBDCs. Let's see if we can find it. Bear with me here. CBDCs. Right? Right. Here we go. The World Economic Forum, right, annual meeting held in Davos, has identified 2026 as a critical inflection point for the digital economy, with a heavy emphasis on the scaling of CBDCs, tokenized assets, and the digital infrastructure supporting them. Right? The discussion focuses on transitioning digital finance from experimental to mainstream, systemic, and regulated infrastructure. Right? So it says the WEF considers 2026 a defining moment for digital finance, with 98% of central banks actively researching, piloting, or deploying CBDCs. CBDCs and interoperability. Discussions center on moving beyond experiments to integrating CBDCs into the core of financial market infrastructure. Key focus areas include cross-border functionality, interoperability between different CBDC projects, stablecoins, and tokenized deposits. And see, there's so much here, right? Centralized versus decentralized ID. Following a period of scrutiny, the 2026 focus is on balancing the drive for transparency in digital identity with public pushback over privacy concerns, right? So, I mean, this is what's being pushed, but this is not what's gonna be highlighted on the mainstream news. They're gonna highlight Trump wanting to take over Greenland and going to Davos and talking about just that. But they're not gonna talk about this. This you won't see on mainstream media. This you'll see on some other alternative or obscure media sources where you have to dig deep behind the headlines in order to find this. But this is important. This is important. Right? But you're not gonna see that on the mainstream news. Why? Because, right? They need to what? They need to let's bring up that part again, right? They need to distract from unfavorable news and weaken institutions. So you see all this political chaos, this spectacle, and you get caught up in it, emotionally invested, confused, wondering what to believe. Is Trump telling the truth? Is NATO telling the truth? Is Canada telling the truth? Is China telling the truth? Right? And all this is happening, but then the world behind the scenes is moving towards closing in on the MOTB, which is the RFID microchip implant. The CBDC systems are coming online, right? The digital euro, right? Let me go in. I believe they have the AI mode for this thing here, right? Let's right? How does the digital euro fit into this WEF framework? Because that's another thing that's being pushed right now, the digital euro, right? So it says the digital euro aligns with the World Economic Forum's 2026 agenda by providing a public sovereign CBDC solution that leverages the forthcoming EU digital identity wallet, right? So it's here, it's coming, it's being pushed. You understand? So now it's going to be tied to your user authentication, which means what? Your ID, so your ID and your wallet is going to be connected, right? The current plan assumes that if the legislation is adopted in 2026, a pilot exercise could begin in 2027 with potential issuance during 2029. And what's the deadline? 2030. Come on, man, come on. It's happening. It's happening, right? So, Psalm 64:2, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity, who whet their tongue like a sword and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words that they may shoot in secret and perfect. Suddenly do they shoot at him and fear not. They encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune of laying snares privily. They say, who shall see them? Right? They search out iniquities, they accomplish a diligent search, both the inward thought and of every one of them, and the heart is deep. Right? So, let's look up something here now. Right? How is political spectacle and confusion used in casting mass spells on populations? Right? Let's see if we will actually admit that witchcraft is in use here. Right? So it's just using the word mass politics. So this process often metaphorically likened to casting spells. So it's not metaphoric, it's actually true, yo. Right? They're using these things, to cast spells on you. That's why a TV station is called a channel, right? Or a broadcast, or it's called media, which is the capital of the plural of medium, right? So that's pretty much what I wanted to bring out. Hopefully this lesson was edifying. Until next time, shalom.